Hi, my name is Peter Biro. I am a classified Kiswahili teacher. I'm based in Nairobi. I offer private classes. I can reach you in your office, your residential place, or any place convenient with you. You can reach me on telephone numbers that appear on the screen. Kindly subscribe, share, like for more video updates. Thank you. Hello? Hujambo? Habari gani? Habari za nyumbani? Habari za kazi? Habari za masomo? Okay, I hope you got me. Now you can do the greeting. Now, in our lesson today, I'm going to introduce more verbs that we didn't mention in our last lesson. Now, the verbs I'm going to talk about today are monosyllabic verbs. The monosyllabic verbs are those verbs that if you use, then you use them with the infinitive ku when you conjugate. Now, here is a list of the verbs. I have kula, kula, kunywa, kunywa, kuja, kuja, kupa, kupa, kuwa, kuwa. Now, they are monosyllabic verbs because if you look at the construction on the verb kula, it has only one syllable. So, these verbs, the monosyllabic verbs are not many. If anything, they are very few. Could be this is the majority part of them. Now, if you use the monosyllabic verbs, then when you conjugate, then you conjugate with infinitive ku, like I told you. So you'll have, for the verb kula, kula is to eat. Kula is to eat. Kula is to eat. Kunywa, kunywa is to drink. To drink. And then kuja is to come. Kuja is to come. Kupa is to give. To give. Kuwa is to be. Kuwa is the verb to be. Kuwa is the verb to be in Kiswahili. Kuwa. So whenever you use these verbs, you'll find that you conjugate with the infinitive ku. For example, kula, to eat, you say ninakula. Ninakula for I'm eating. Unakula, unakula, you are eating. Anakula, he or she is eating. Tunakula, we are eating. Mnakula, you all are eating. Or wanakula, which is they are eating. So whenever you use these verbs, I was just going to remind you that they are used with infinitive. So if you have to use kunywa, you say ninakunywa. Ninakunywa. If you want to say kuja, you say ninakuja. Ninakunywa, I'm drinking. Ninakuja, I'm coming. But we shall put a break on the verb kupa. Verb kupa, which is to give, is a very unique verb in Kiswahili. Whenever we use it, there is some kind of grammatical structures that we shall learn about it later, so we shall keep it in suspense. Verb kupa is to give. Then we have verb kuwa, which is to be. also is used in some category. You cannot use it in the present tense, so we also shall keep it in suspense. So the only verbs that you can deal with now is kula, kunywa, kuja. So I would say ninakula, ninakuja, au ninakunywa. If you're drinking something, I would ask you, unakunywa nini? Unakunywa nini? Remember, nini was what? Au unakula nini? Or if I was asking about that person, I would ask, anakula nini? Au anakunywa nini? So I was just trying to give you this so that you remember that apart from the other verbs which you have used, we have the monosyllabic verbs that are used in a special way. You have to conjugate using the infinitive ku. Because the verb term is so short, I think so, then they have made it like, it is made like you use the ku. So it becomes nakula, ninakunywa, as opposed to using kutoka where you say ninatoka, ninapenda, ninaitwa. You drop the ku for those other verbs, but for the monosyllabics, you'll have to retain the ku. Thank you, and that was just to continue to explain to you how we conjugate the verbs. Now, the most important thing about this lesson today, I want to introduce to you how we negate. How we negate in this tense, the not tense. Negation in the not tense. It's very important that you also talk about negation. So, you have ninatoka, unatoka, anatoka, tunatoka, mnatoka, wanatoka. And toka, remember, is the verb to come from. Kutoka is to come from. Kutoka was to come from. We have the verb kutoka, and you remember, I told you the verb kutoka is to come from. So if you conjugate, you'll have ninatoka, unatoka, anatoka, tunatoka, mnatoka, wanatoka. Now, today we want to talk about the negation. The subject prefixes will be negated. So the ni will be negated si. So ni is I, si would be I am not. So if you have ni is I, but si is not. If you negate the prefix. So the u will be negated who. It is who. Who. Who is negated? Who. Who. Is negated ha. Ha. To is negated hatu. Hatu. Is negated hum. Hum. Wa is negated hawa. Hawa. So it's si, who, ha, hatu, hum, hawa. So where we have ninatoka, it becomes sitoki. Sitoki. So ninatoka is I come from. I come from. Sitoki is I don't come from. So sitoki. Ninatoka becomes sitoki. Unatoka becomes hutoki. Hutoki. Like I told you, u is negated who. Who is negated who. So unatoka becomes hutoki. Hutoki. Anatoka becomes hatoki, hatoki. So becomes ha. Tunatoka becomes hatutoki. This is u. So tu becomes hatu, hatu. Mnatoka becomes hamtoki, hamtoki. The becomes ham, ham. Wanatoka becomes hawatoki, hawatoki. Wa becomes hawa. So in this sense, you can see clearly that we have ni, negated si, u, negated hu, negated ha. Tu is negated ha, tu. Is negated ham. Is negated ham, and then wa is negated hawa. So you have ninatoka, sitoki. Unatoka, hutoki. Anatoka, hatoki. Tunatoka, hatutoki. Mnatoka, hamtoki. Then wanatoka, hawatoki. So then, you can also note that when you negate, you can also note that when you negate in this sense, then the suffix a changes to I. This is another very vital thing to note. So when you negate toka, it becomes toki, toki. So I would also tell you that most of the verbs in Kiswahili, you'll find that they end in a. They have suffix a. Like you can remember, you can see kula, kunywa, kuja, kupa, kuwa, and we also had penda, taka, penda, toka, and also itwa. So all these verbs, you'll find that majority of the verbs in Kiswahili, they end in a. And these are the Bantu origin verbs. Kiswahili is so connected, if you know the history of the Bantus. The Bantu, Kiswahili is like connected to Bantu languages. So you find that the Bantu origin verbs, they end in a. We have other verbs that end in a, e, o, or u. If you come across these verbs that end in these vowels, then these are Arabic verbs, but we shall talk about that later. So basically, I'm still talking about the verbs that end in a. In this sense, if you negate them in the now tense, you end up having e. This is e, suffix e. So toka becomes toki. Toka becomes toki. And then let's now look at some other verbs. Let's have some other verbs here. Let me have the verb penda. You want to say ni na penda. Ninapenda, first of all, if you want to see this, some technicalities that you also notice in this negation. First of all, if you negate, you see ninapenda becomes si. If you want to negate, you negate the prefix first. But again, something very important to note is that the tense drops, then you immediately bring the verb penda, then the suffix a changes to I. So it becomes sipendi. 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 I'm going to explain this again. When you are negating in the now tense, there are 3 steps to observe. First of all, when you negate, you start with the negation of the subject prefix. You negate the subject prefix. Step number 1. You negate the subject prefix. Step number 2, drop the tense. Then step number 3, suffix a changes to I. So these are the 3 major steps to observe when you are negating in the now tense. So then you have when you have Nina Penda, then if I want to negate Nina Penda, first of all I negate the C. Then let me say I have the C na Penda. This is the first step. Second step, I'll drop the second step, I'll drop the tense. Then I have C Penda. Third step, just have C Penda. Third step, then I will have C P D. So you can find the changes. First of all, I negate this prefix. Secondly, I drop the na, I have Penda. Then thirdly, I change the suffix a to I. Then it becomes sipendi. Now, generally, this is some of the criteria that you may observe to come with a negation. Just remember that when you're negating in the now tense, first of all, negate the prefix, the subject prefix. Then you change the suffix of the verb a to I. So when you have ninapenda, it becomes sipendi. Ninaitwa then becomes what? If you have ninaitwa, then becomes si itwi. Ninaitwa then becomes si itwi. Okay, if you have ninasoma then becomes si somi. And the verb kusoma was to read or to study. You say ninasoma, sisomi, au ninapenda, sipendi, ninatoka, sitoki, ninajifunza, sijifunzi. Remember, I gave you those verbs that you're supposed to practice on. Kujifunza, kusema, kusoma, kupika. So ninapika would be sipiki. Remember the negation. So if you have the subject prefix which is ni, u, a, to, wa, then you have the negation si, hu, ha, tu, ham, how. And this one stay. We shall use other tenses, which of course, when we come to other tenses, the now will change to something else. Then if you are conjugating, the conjugation will be the same. And then if you're going to negate, also the negation, you also have to negate the prefixes in that category. So it's always very important for you to remember your subject prefixes and the negation pattern. Ni, si. U, hu. A, ha. Tu, hatu. Ham, hawa. Now, if you do, let's see one of the very important parts here again. How do you go about the monosyllabic verbs? Monosyllabic verbs will have a small change in them. Now, if you have ninakula, kula was to eat, ninakula, then when you negate monosyllabic verbs, now is when the ku drops, the ku infinitive drops. So ninakula becomes silly. Silly. Ninakula becomes silly. Unakula becomes huli. You can see we have dropped the ku. Anakula becomes hali. Tunakula becomes hatuli. Mnakula becomes hamli. Then wanakula becomes hawali. So you end up having silly, huli, hali, hatuli, hamli, or hawali. So when you negate any monosyllabic verb, kula, kunywa, kuja, you can say sinywi pombe. Can we have this? Pombe is what? Pombe is alcohol. So if somebody says sinywi pombe, basically means I don't drink alcohol. Pombe. So sinywi, you can say siji. Kuja, which is to come. You say ninakuja becomes siji. Ninakuja becomes siji. And I think that was all to explain on our negation. Please try to use more of the verbs, conjugate in the positive, and also do the negation part of it. So if you conjugate in the positive, then you do the negation for more practice so that you understand it fully. Otherwise, I hope you understood. I hope you enjoyed. Please, I would only ask you to subscribe, like, or share. But then again, we shall meet in our next lesson. Thank you.